Welcome back to my channel. I'm MonkieC, and thank you guys so much for being here. I'll be breaking down the top 5 AFC franchises to rebuild here in Madden 25. I posted a video on the top 5 NFC teams to rebuild, which I encourage you to check out if you haven't already, and the link to that will be at the end screen of this video. This is just my take and maybe some surprises along the way, but there are a lot of options to consider in the AFC, so let's dive right in. Starting with the worst team in the AFC last year, and that's the New England Patriots. We're witnessing a new era with this team, a franchise that once stood a prolific dynasty under the leadership of Tom Brady, and now they enter another transition in a post-Belichick era. This is a period marked with a lot of uncertainty and a need for fresh direction. The Patriots have taken a significant step forward by selecting their future quarterback in Drake May. Personally, I'm a big fan of May, even more than Caleb Williams, though that might not age well, but let's face it, he's also been drafted in a very tough situation. The Patriots offense is a barren landscape when it comes to playmakers. Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson is arguably the best offensive players right now, and while Stevenson is a solid back, he's not the type of game changer who can carry a team. This lack of firepower makes it a challenging environment for any quarterback, let alone a rookie. And that's why you might consider starting Jacoby Brissett to start this rebuild rather than throwing May into the Wolves immediately. The offensive line is another area of concern. Outside of MonkieCYoutube, maybe Cole Strange, and with David Andrews nearing retirement, there are a lot of significant holes there to fill too. This line needs a lot of work before it can adequately protect May and help this offense function at a high level. They also recently released Juju Smith-Schuster, and the team did select Jalen Polk in the second round, and he could develop into an exciting piece for the offense, and it wouldn't hurt to start him right away since the other receivers won't make much of an impact. But let's be honest, if you're going to make this offense relevant like it once was, you're going to need to bring in some serious firepower. If you like drafting playmakers to help May's development, the Patriots are your team. On the defensive side of the ball, there are a few bright spots. The secondary in particular has some promising talent, starting with the rising star Christian Gonzalez. He had a strong rookie season before getting hurt, and with further development, he could become a cornerstone of this defense. Christian Barmore is another name to watch out for. He's shown plenty of potential to become a key part of this front seven. Meanwhile, Josh Uche also showed flashes of his ability to make an impact as an edge rusher, but still needs further development, and the Patriots got him on a crazy deal. However, the rest of this defense is aging. Matthew Judon is their best defensive player. He's also currently 32, and regression in Madden is going to hit him hard. And he's also frustrated in real life with his contract situation, so that's something you can implement to your franchise to make it more realistic. Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar and their starting linebackers are all 28, and Jonathan Jones is 30. This is a roster that's quickly running out of time, and it's a mess right now. Rebuilding this team and bringing them back to the promised land is going to take a lot of work, maybe even a miracle. But hey, at least they've drafted who they believe will be their franchise quarterback. So can you build a team around Drake May to support his development and bring this team back to a new dynasty? From rookie quarterback to veteran quarterback, the next team in the AFC rebuild is the New York Jets. Before we dive into why the Jets are a prime rebuild option, let's start with the positives. First off, this is probably one of the best defenses in Madden, anchored by Sauce Gardner. Gardner is arguably one of the best corners in the league, capable of shutting down an entire side of the field. Pair that with a front seven led by Quinnen Williams, a top 3 defensive tackle in the league, and you've got a defense that's stacked with big-time players. Offensively, the Jets have a blue-chip running back in Breece Hall. He's a dynamic do-it-all player who can take over a game with his versatility. He's got the speed to break off big runs, the hands of a reliable receiver out of the backfield, and the toughness to grind out yards in between the tackles. But perhaps the most exciting piece on this offense is Garrett Wilson. He has all the makings of a superstar wide receiver. He showcased his ability to separate from defenders, make contested catches, and turn short gains into big plays. He may be the best receiver out of his class, and with the right development could easily become one of the best in the league. So what makes the Jets a rebuild team with all this talent? and it's really the rest of the team that puts me in a doubtful state of mind. And that comes with the million-dollar question. What does life look like after Aaron Rodgers? The Jets are so focused on the win now approach, which I appreciate, but there's no plan beyond that, it seems. The only quarterback on the roster that has potential of developing is Jordan Travis, but you wonder what his career is going to look like after that gruesome injury. They did have an opportunity to address the position in the draft with a top 10 pick, but they opted for an offensive lineman in Olu Fashanu, which is understandable as well. He's a good pick and a player who could be your franchise left tackle for years to come, but it's frightening to think about this team beyond this year. While on the offensive line topic, it's talented but fragile. Players like Morgan Moses and Tyrone Smith are excellent when healthy, but their durability is a major concern. And when there's Mike Williams, who's also injury prone on a 1-year deal, the Jets are clearly going all in. But what if things don't pan out? Will the gamble be worth it? Defensively, they have Jermaine Johnson, who's in the right trajectory in his development, who you'll need to decide whether to pay or not, and that goes for Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Sauce Gardner, who all came out of the same draft class. Speaking of finances, there's also a disgruntled Hassan Reddick who might demand a new contract. CJ Mosley is getting older, and the safety positions need significant upgrades. This team is built to win now, and I understand the urgency, but if Aaron Rodgers were to retire tomorrow, what would the identity of this team be? It's these uncertainties that make the Jets a prime candidate for a rebuild in Madden 25, because I do think they're going to be successful in the year 2024, but beyond that, it raises major concerns. While speaking on Aaron Rodgers, this next team to rebuild in Madden 25 features his former teammate, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders. Not only did they have to witness their rivals playing for the Super Bowl in their own turf, they also had an offseason that left fans and analysts scratching their heads. After showing promise following a coaching change last year, there were murmurs that this team might trade up for a franchise quarterback. But instead, they surprised everyone by selecting Brock Bowers, who they believe was the best player available, despite already having drafted Michael Mayer at tight end in the second round just last season. The decision to draft Bowers, while understandable from a talent perspective, raises questions on how this offense will function, especially in Madden where running 2 tight ends doesn't always translate well in terms of production. Unless you get creative and use Bowers by lining him up in the slot for better production, it's hard to see how this pick immediately addresses the team's glaring needs, and those needs are plenty. The right side of this offensive line still needs to be improved. They also lost a major piece of their offense when Josh Jacobs left for Green Bay, leaving the question if Zamir White is ready to step up as RB1, or will drafting or signing one in free agency be a focus after the 2024 season? While the offense can still funnel targets to Davante Adams, the lack of reliable weapons beyond him is glaring. It's not even guaranteed that Adams will finish his career in Las Vegas, which opens up the intriguing possibility of trading him. Trading a player of Adams' caliber is a high-risk, high-reward move. On one hand, you could acquire valuable draft capital to incorporate young talent that could help address multiple needs on this roster. On the other hand, losing a top-tier receiver like Adams could set the offense back significantly, leaving your offense with minimal options. It's a gamble that could either accelerate the rebuild or further complicate it, depending on the route that you select. And of course, the quarterback conversation needs to be had, and the options aren't exactly inspiring. Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Minshew Mania is still taking the league by storm after nearly taking the Colts to the playoffs last year. Minshew could be a serviceable bridge quarterback, someone who can keep the team afloat while you look for a long-term solution. And then there's Aiden O'Connell, a 4th round pick from a year ago. O'Connell is still more of an unknown at this point, but he brings some intriguing qualities to the table. If you're willing to put in the time to develop him, O'Connell has the potential to grow into a solid starter. The Raiders' acquisition of Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins is a massive boost to the defensive line, and when you pair him with Max Crosby, one of the league's premier edge rushers, you've got a foundation of a formidable front. This duo can wreak havoc on opposing offenses, and with Tyree Wilson heading into his second year, there's a prime opportunity for him to take a big step forward. With the defensive line like this creating pressure, Wilson could find plenty of chances to capitalize and develop into the player the Raiders hoped he'd be when they drafted him. That said, the defense still has some key areas that need improvement. Upgrading at linebackers would be nice, upgrading the secondary would be crucial to solidify this defense, and turning it into a more complete unit. The Raiders are in a tough spot. They have some elite talent but are still riddled with so many holes across the roster. It's going to take strategic moves and smart drafting to turn this team around, but the potential is there. So can you bring the Raiders back to prominence, or will they continue to flounder in a highly competitive AFC West? And staying in the AFC West, this next team has officially blown it up, and that's the Denver Broncos. Broncos country, it's been a crazy ride, which is why they are a prime candidate for a franchise rebuild here in Madden 25. And it's not hard to see why. This team has experienced a wild offseason moving on from Russell Wilson, which has left them in a tough spot, especially with all that dead cap money that's now hampering their financial flexibility. However, they made the bold move by selecting Bo Nix, the 6th quarterback off the board in the first round. Nix is at 24 years old, so an older prospect, and there's questions about whether he was their first choice or simply just the best option left. Regardless, the Broncos are committed to developing him, but the question remains, is he truly their franchise quarterback for the future? To give Nix a fighting chance, you need to focus on building around him. The offensive line is solid, but it could use some interior depth. More importantly, the Broncos are lacking a true number 1 receiver. Courtland Sutton, who has asked for a trade or a new contract in real life, presents a critical decision for your rebuild. Is Sutton the kind of X-receiver you can build around, or is it time to move on? But there's no question that this team needs a lot of playmakers. And if you like drafting receivers, this team needs your help in a bad way. Other positions include Javonte Williams and Greg Dulcich at tight end, so maybe those are options that you can continue to build on and develop. But one intriguing option could be to develop Troy Franklin, Nix's former teammate from Oregon, and to see if their college chemistry can translate to NFL success. Also, with Jerry Jeudy's departure, Marvin Mims is set to take on a bigger role, a development opportunity that was actually really fun in my Madden 24 franchise when I took over the Broncos. You're gonna have to be patient with this receiving group, or potentially take a high one in the draft as a legitimate option. On the defensive side of the ball, there's some young talent to work with, especially at the edge rusher position with Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, and Jonah Ellis, who they selected in this year's draft. These edge rushers could be the focal point of your defense and your future, but the defensive line as a whole still needs some upgrades. There aren't a lot of bright spots on this Broncos roster, which is why it's one of the weakest in the league in Madden 25. Secondary help was also in need, along with the safeties to complement a rare bright spot on this team in Patrick Surtain, who's arguably one of the top corners in the NFL. If you can solidify the defensive line, find more reliable DBs to pair with him, Surtain could lead one of the most formidable defenses in Madden 25. His presence on this Broncos roster makes him a team with a defensive identity, even as you work to figure out the offense. Turning the Broncos back into contenders will be a significant challenge, but it's that very challenge that makes them such an exciting rebuild project in Madden 25. Whether it's developing Bo Nix into a franchise quarterback or reshaping the defense around Surtain, the potential to reshape this franchise is enormous. Finally, the last team that I'm going to mention is also a team that's trying to figure out their quarterback position and see if this is their guy. The Tennessee Titans are entering the season in a critical juncture, making them an ideal candidate for a rebuild in Madden 25. This team is navigating a significant transition period, having moved on from the Derrick Henry era, and is now focused on determining whether Will Levis is their franchise quarterback. However, the entire trajectory of the Titans hinges on whether Levis can step up to the plate. If he falters, the team could face a prolonged struggle, setting the rebuild back and forcing them into a continuous search for their next QB. Levis was a second-round gamble, and while the Titans have invested in his development, there's always a risk that he may not fulfill the potential they're banking on. If Levis does not develop, the Titans could be in a lengthy, challenging rebuild, especially without a clear alternative plan at that position. Looking at the entire roster, the Titans have attempted to put all the pieces for him to succeed and point the needle into the right direction. Starting with DeAndre Hopkins, who has been a reliable target, and his connection with Levis proved to be effective last season. However, Hopkins is entering his age 32 season, and while he still possesses elite skills, you wonder if regression is going to affect his performance soon. If the Titans struggle this season, Hopkins also becomes an intriguing trade option. They also signed Calvin Ridley and stealing him away from the Jacksonville Jaguars, which came as a shock to many. He proves to be a strong 1-2 punch with Hopkins, giving Levis formidable weapons. Ridley is turning 30 after this season, and we'll see how this signing will play itself out. It may work out in the first couple of seasons, just don't bet on it. Additionally, Tyler Boyd's signing adds depth to this receiving group, and that may add some pressure on the former first-round pick Treylon Burks to finally live up to his potential. We're hoping that you can still develop him in Madden 25, but Burks has not yet proven his value. But with this receiving core, there is hope that he could finally break out. And with Derrick Henry gone, the Titans have now turned to Tony Pollard for stability in the running game. However, the real excitement lies in the developing Tajay Spears, a versatile back who could bring a new dimension to the Titans' offense, shifting away from the ground and pound identity they had with Henry as they enter into this potentially air-raided offense. The offensive line, despite the first-round selection of J.C. Latham, remains a significant concern. Latham was a necessary pick, but the Titans still desperately need more help in the trenches. The success of Levis and the overall offense will largely depend on how well this line can protect and support their starting QB. Staying on the trenches on the defensive side, they selected a massive 360+ pound nose tackle in T'Vondre Sweat, who is expected to plug up the middle and create opportunities for the rest of this defensive line. And he'll get to line up next to Jeffrey Simmons, the face of this defense, and his role in any rebuild scenario for this team cannot be overstated. As one of the premier defensive tackles in the NFL, Simmons will be a huge part of who you'll build this defense around. The secondary received a boost with the addition of L'Jarius Sneed, though this move comes at a cost of a third-round pick in the 2025 draft. This trade needs to pay off if the Titans hope to make significant strides on defense. However, the defense as a whole still has so many holes. Upgrades are needed at safety, linebackers, edge rushers, and potentially adding another corner as well. The Titans face numerous uncertainties in a division that's becoming increasingly competitive, especially with other teams feeling more secured at their quarterback position. This makes the Titans situation both complex and potentially prolonged. With so many positions in flux, the looming question of whether Will Levis is truly the long-term solution at quarterback, it could take several seasons to turn this team into a contender, or even longer if key players fail to develop as expected. But these are my top 5 AFC teams to rebuild in Madden 25. Other teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins were also contenders, but the 5 I selected either desperately need major overhauls, or they're at a risk of struggling after their first season without a solid plan for the future. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which franchise do you think is the most intriguing to rebuild? And are there any other teams you think that should be on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm always excited to hear your suggestions as I continue to grow this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I hope you have a great time with Madden 25 and an even better day.